Okay, so I've just taken a second there to kind of add just some detail here to get an idea what you can do with the combination of the normals and the height information. But let's also take a look at how we can kind of fine tune how this is going to end up looking. So let's go into the chipped metal. So in here, so the micro details where we turned them both on, we have a bunch of different things that we can kind of adjust to affect how heavy-handed or how light the effects are from our micro details. And we can kind of see that updating on the model. And let me get to a spot where you can see kind of two different things going on. So these details here, this is all done through the height. This thing and this thing are both done through the normal. So we can see the first one, it's doing global. It's hitting both. If we play around with just the height, then we're actually seeing it just happening on the height layer. And the same with the ambient occlusion radius and depth. To a lesser degree, we're getting some kind of mileage off of it on the normals, but not as much. Curvature intensity is kind of basically your one-stop shopping for dialing this in. Usually it's a pretty decent effect right out of the box, but just know that you've got the ability to kind of dial those in and play around with them to see to adjust if they're not exactly kind of how you were picturing that you wanted them to be. And also another thing that we're going to look at, since we're kind of at the end here, so one thing to get into the habit of doing is doing the hard work up front and then not having to do that again. So what we've created here, and I argue it is very, very simple. We got a base color, we got some dirt, we got some chipped paint. But more importantly, the chipped paint and the dirt are paying attention to this normal detail and the height detail. So if we were to go in and just create a folder, bring it to the top, clicking on the first layer, holding down Shift, grabbing everything and dropping them in. And I call this red chipped. And as a personal thing of mine, I drop in an underscore. And I'll show you why in a second. So as with all of this in a folder and it named, we can right click on it and create a smart material. And then it's going to load up my smart materials and drop it in. So the reason I put an underscore on mine is what it allows me to do is it separates my handmade smart materials from all the smart materials that come with it or the ones I've downloaded or what have you. So even though you have a leather, it's not going to be sitting beside the leatherette, the leather suit, and all the ones that are either coming by default or the ones that I've kind of grabbed later. So you can kind of get and just see yours a little bit easier. And as you get going with this, if you're doing it right, you should be creating a whole series of smart materials as you go, and especially too as you start to implement this thing into establishing an overall style for your project. This is how your base skin is going to be set up. This is going to be what leather looks like in your world, and all that kind of thing. So you do it and you refine it, get it perfect, and then you smart material it up. So you don't have to do it for every single leather object that's going to be in your world. You've got a baseline, you drop it on, and then you adjust it. So with this red chip paint, the way I've got it set up with all of this other stuff, let's take a quick look. I'm going to do a new, and I'm going to just grab the old chair from way back. Hopefully it's correct. Okay, good. Let's do a quick bake on it. Here, chair high, bake. There we go. And so we've got our nice little curvature there. Perfect. So for this one here, so say we do want to use our chipped metal, or red chipped. So if we drop this in, now two things you're going to notice. First off, one, what I should have done is cleared this information, but that's easy enough to do. So I'm going into the height detail, hitting X to go over to my white, and just painting this stuff out. Now with the white, I'm going to undo that and switch it back to black, so it was actually set on it correctly. Now I'm going to actually paint this stuff out. And remember from the previous video, the reason I'm doing this and actually not right clicking on it and creating a new height, or creating a new black mask, because it will clear this, and that will in effect knock out the connection that I've already made here. Same with the normal map. I'm going to go in and clear this out. This, remember, is an actual empty layer, so we can't just fill it. We need to actually use the eraser and go in and get rid of this information that's all kicking around here. And so it's at this stage where you've actually cleared all this information. This would be the better time to actually do. So I'm going to delete the one I made. And I'm actually just going to re-add it. And so this one here is set up, but more importantly, these things are actually empty, which is what we're looking for. So now, as opposed to just it being a decent start as far as chip paint goes, it is ready to go as far as adding any of your kind of after the fact detail. And because the smart material is preserving the relationship between the height and normal into the chipped and dirt. So as I go in and just create these things, I fall for this every time. I'm still in eraser, that's why I couldn't find the normal. Go back into paintbrush. Now I've actually got access to it. Grabbing here and punching in this stuff. So if you do your smart materials in a smart way, not only will you have a good head start on how you want certain things to look in your production setting, but you'll also have this part of it set up and good to go. And in an example like this doesn't seem like a huge deal. I've got chipped and dirt. But in a real setting, as you start to kind of take this further, you're not going to have just these two. You're going to have, like, some moss and dirt that actually starts from here and works its way up, oxidation of steel. Not only is your paint chipping off, but then there's also a more subtle area where your paint is actually fading before it starts to chip. So you could end up with 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 of these things and have them all plugged into your normal detail and your height detail via the anchoring. And as long as you've got it saved as a smart material, you're not having to set this up from scratch every single time.